Okay, thank you. Welcome to our meeting, Trusting Gazette Mail meeting with candidates from House District 36, 37, and we have one from 41 today, from 40 today, excuse me, who couldn't make it on the other day. So I'm Don Miller, I'm the Gazette. Can you page under?
Greg Moore, I'm the Gazette Mail. Jake Sacrament, politics board. Kelly Merritt, editor of the Daily Mail opinion page. Chris Shores.
Thank you. So now we'd like you, each of you, and we'll start around the end with Andrew. Just tell us who you are and why you're running. Keep it short, under a minute, and then we'll get some questions. Okay?
Well, I'm Andrew Robinson. I've had the opportunity and honor to serve for the last 22 months in the 36th district. I'm a single father, small business owner, work for myself in a real estate firm with brokerage and appraisals and real estate auctions. I chose to run a couple years ago because I thought we could have some stronger leadership, some stronger representation for the 36th district, and somebody that was going to be a little more active and not scared to step forward or work with other people to get some things done. So over the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to work on things like vocational education. That's kind of my key point of things I want to push and grow in West Virginia. We've been able to do things like create the Ron Brown Fund, which put $13 million back into building beds in West Virginia. Ron Brown was a friend of mine growing up and passed away, and his mother's become an advocate, and she was instrumental in putting that legislation forward. Happy to work on things like that. Those are my issues. I like to focus on community development. Historic tax credit was something I was very happy to work on. And that's it.
Hello, my name is Chris Brown, candidate for the House of Delegates in the 36th district. And what motivated me to run for the House of Delegates was my two sons. My wife and I have chosen to raise our two sons here in the Canal Valley. We're both small business owners. About 11 years ago, we started up our own small law office, and we've continued that since then. One of the things that I want to focus on as a candidate, and I think everybody should be focusing on, is economic development. We have seen an out-migration for decades in our state, and I think that was the result of basically what were bad policies. And what we need to do is focus on policies that are going to encourage economic development in West Virginia, and in particular the 36th district. My goal is that when my two sons are adults, I want them to have the opportunity to live in West Virginia and have a good paying job if that's what they choose to do. It's, if we can do that and have the right policies, I think that's possible. I think West Virginia has a lot of great things going for it. We have the best people, we have hardworking people, and if we can just take our resources and use them in the right way, I know that out-migration that we've seen for decades can be turned around. And that's what I want to see happen, and that's the reason that I'm running.
Thank you. My name is Larry Russell. I'm a member of the House of Delegates at this time. I was elected in 2014, 2016. I live in East Kanawha County, and the 36th district really is centered in East Kanawha County. And my interest is in helping. I think Chris is right in the economic development. We definitely do. I want to support a number of programs that I think will make a difference in economic development. Certainly, I know that some of the folks have been proclaiming and celebrating the fact that the overall economy of the state is up, and we want that. But it's also sectionalized. It's not up in southern West Virginia. That's where we need to focus. I would say that one of the focus points that we had this year is employees fixing PPI and compensation. We've got to dedicate a funding mechanism for that. I think we have gas tax like the one we just took off 3 years ago. We need those that to take care of the PPI problem. But also, we need to look at raises generally and how we can keep them up with inflation. 5% is a good pay raise, but it really barely covers inflation in the last several years. So we need to look at that. I think we need to look at the governor's plan for career center, high school, advanced placement program. I think that's a good idea. So that young people can graduate from high school and be ready to get the workforce with a certificate or degree. We need free college, community technical college scholarships that encourage people to go. The average age is 29. The years for people in community and technical college. These are our folks, these are people who committed to much money, they're raising families, and they need help with vision. Also, we need to do something on pothole repair. We're looking at new road construction. The bonds ought to be used for all the new road construction. The monies that are left in the regular budget for construction ought to be dedicated to paving projects and pothole repair. Also, I'm very encouraged about tourism, and I think that we need to protect and encourage the arts programs. We talk about economic development now. Well, we have an industry of arts and music programs. I'm very happy to be here and appreciate it.
My name is Matthew Garrett, and I'm in 36th District. And I'm just a common man. I like to call myself. I'm the sweet gentleman here. And one of the biggest reasons I decided to run was because I didn't see you were any common man. I didn't know who it was, what politics was supposed to be. It was the common man who had beliefs, especially around. And I see a lot of problems within our state. One of the biggest things is the epidemic and the growth of our state. There's many problems with that, and there's so many solutions, but I said it's been clear solution. There's obviously treatment centers is a big thing that I want to push for because you can't. Addicts aren't necessarily criminals; they might be criminal things, but that is still a person, and I believe we need treatment centers to get them back to where they should be. I'd like to see more business be brought in. I'm all like the last two guys, but it's really good for us.
My name is Mike Pushkin. I'm currently a member of the House of Delegates. And I'm running for re-election representing the 37th District in the House of Delegates for the same reason that I ran the first time back in 2014. I feel that folks in this district deserve a delegate who will show up for events, get out there, listen to the people in the district. I think that's how a representative should be. It's not so much about bringing my agenda to the Capitol. It's about going out and talking to folks. And more importantly, listening to people in the district, showing up at the community meetings and getting a good feel for what their conscience is and carrying that to the Capitol. So that would mean in talking to people, I think what some of the things that are most concerning people out there is, first of all, the outward migration of young people from our state. Do what we can to make this a more attractive state so our kids will stay here, want to stay here, raise their families here too. Of course, fixing and funding PEIA for a lot of public employees in this district have. So I mean, a real solution. So we're not coming back year after year trying to find a funding source for this insurance program that they were promised when they took that job. Of course, addressing the drug crisis in the state. I sit on the board for Recovery in West Virginia. There are plenty of different ideas out there. No real solution to the problem, but a lot of ways that we can curb the demand for illegal drugs and prescription drugs in this state. That's something that's concerning people. And basically, providing a safe place for people to live and raise their kids in an environment that will attract new businesses and the small businesses we have here.
I'm Richard Patrick, and I'm also running for the 37. That's downtown Charleston, East End, West End, and North Charleston. And I'm running because I live with the people. I talk to the people every day. I know what their problems is. I know what they want done. I know when someone to speak up for them, because election is really about the people, not the candidate. Some of the problems include lack of jobs. Well, West Virginia's on the upswing, and now it's time to utilize that upswing and help the businesses grow any way possible to create more good paying jobs. They'll sit on porches with 6, 7 people at a time saying they need jobs. Taco Bell doesn't do it. A lot of the problems we're having, and it's a statewide issue, not just centered in Charleston, where it's the worst. But it's all these abandoned buildings, abandoned homes. That breeds crime, okay? That raises everybody's insurance costs into the side of it. It lowers home values. And worst of all, How many businesses want to come in and drive through a ghost town or a bunch of dilapidated buildings? There has to be a way, even if it takes part of that on sales tax, to bleed it down like the sales tax, to clean these places up, make our communities better looking, more attractive, and with less crime coming through. Like everybody else, I'm going to mention the opioid crisis, which the Gazette reported is leveling off. Okay, it's leveling off. The DHHR has a wonderful 25-page plan that needs to be followed through to continue this leveling off. But speak to any police officer out there, and meth, and it's not generally your backpack meth or the trunk meth we used to have. Meth is coming in from other countries. Strong, hardcore meth. And the police are having a heck of a time, although they're doing a great job trying to brutality. That's the new approach when it comes to drugs. It's methamphetamines. Laced marijuana is coming in to the state. And already I've seen 3 cases where medical marijuana has already hit the streets. People get the prescription, get it, and it's hitting the streets, sold, black market, whatever you want to call it. So the marijuana is going to be a problem, and the cartels know that where there's marijuana, they bring in their cheaper laced marijuana into their areas, happening in Colorado. So drugs are an issue, jobs are a definite issue. I'm a pro-business candidate. I believe businesses need every opportunity they have to grow, or that the state can manage to give them to grow. And I think that sales tax at the state's more greater, that's lower for the people on fixed incomes.
My name is Dean Jeffries. I am a candidate in the 40th District. I was recently appointed to the House of Delegates by the Governor on September 5th. I'm a small business owner in my district. I have 4 children. Our district was devastated by the flood of 2016. So as a business owner, we have suffered from that by watching people use the flood as the opportunity that they needed to leave West Virginia. A lot of people have always talked about it, said they'd leave. When we had the catastrophe of the flood, it gave them a reason to leave. I have, like I said, 4 children. There's not a week that goes by, and not sometimes days that go by, that one of our kids isn't talking about me. My focus is on bringing jobs to West Virginia to retain our most valuable resource, our young adults. They're being exported in droves due to our lack of jobs. We have to bring jobs into this state. And with that being my focus, I mean, we've got to address the opioid and education issues as well. Those are key to jobs. We have to take care of the workforce that's being decimated by the opioid crisis. We have to have an education plan to produce workers for these jobs. So I'm for jobs for all people in West Virginia, not certain groups, not just my district, but for all of West Virginia.
Thank you all for that. Delegates, I want to start with you. You all mentioned the need for jobs in the area and the general brain drain in the area. What kind of specific policies can you enact from the state house that would bring jobs to the area and keep young people in West Virginia?
One thing we need to do is focus on our tax situation here. Not just the people of West Virginia, but our businesses too. We are overtaxed. The tax burden is too much for businesses and people in West Virginia. We've done a good job. We're seeing the results of decreased taxes. We have a surplus that is 60 plus million. That just came from increased tax revenue. We've got to continue increasing regulation that keeps businesses from coming. Our legal environment, we must improve that. One of the big things is the business inventory tax. I think we need to eliminate that. West Virginia is such a wonderful place. And if you look at young adults today, they want to live in places with outdoor recreation. we've got that. We've got a great place for young adults. Why aren't they coming? Why aren't businesses coming here and setting up? There is a reason for that. They look at these things such as our tax structure, our regulation, our legal environment, and they are turned off by it. We're making progress. There's still a lot of work to do.
To follow up on something you said, you mentioned the inventory tax. If I remember from last year, I think that was $140 million revenue loss over 7 years, I'm gonna say. So I mean, give or take from that, how do we fill that budget hole?
Not increased revenue with businesses that come in. We're seeing it. We decrease taxes, the tax revenue increases. It takes time. It's not instant trade here for here. It will happen. If you decrease that tax burden, it makes us more attractive to businesses to come in. And then we have a bigger tax base. We are putting a tax burden on so few people now they can't weather it anymore. We have got to cut that, make the pot bigger with reasonable tax, and we'll have that tax revenue.
Please go down.
Okay, what's your question now?
The question would be, what can you do to bring jobs to West Virginia and keep down the area?
Well, I can't do nothing wrong. It's going to be the legislature, sit down, get their heads together, and look at the revenue there is to work with right now. Look at what's coming in, tax revenue wise, and figure out a plan. You can't go from here to South Hills without knowing what terms you have to make in advance, especially if you've done that trial before. So yeah, there has to be jobs. First, we need to work on education. Okay, bring up our education problems, and I feel like to do that to get more money into the system, that license go to the regional boards of education, like most states have already. That's going to take care of PDI, teacher pay, because there's millions of dollars spent on the county boards, which should be regional. Jobs wise, to bring in jobs, we need to look at the businesses we have, what we can do to help them grow. And it's not just businesses, that includes manufacturing and the extraction businesses, oil and gas, gold. We have a great opportunity right now. Things are looking great. We need to take back some of that revenue that's going in and use it to help grow the economy, help teach our people, help bring in those good paying jobs. $18, $23 an hour, which is happening right now up there in the oil and gas areas. $23. They can't get enough truck drivers. CDLs. You know, we need to train the people. We need to help industries like that grow. We need to help our manufacturing base grow and bring in more manufacturing. But it's going to have to take dipping in some of that excess revenue to use it. Any business knows, anyone that's in business knows for a fact that you take a little bit of what you have coming in, whatever you can afford coming in, to use that to grow that business. See, that's what we have to do here. We need to use that little bit of extra we can find as a team, working out a roadmap and grow West Virginia's economy. We've got beyond what it is right now. And that's going to help create good paying jobs.
Do you have anything more specific? I mean, like any policy change, any revenue change, tax change?
Oh, yeah, the taxes need to come down to corporate income tax and personal taxes. The tax on business property and things, inventory, that needs to roll down also. Because that's a heck of a burden on businesses, especially the ones that aren't doing good. If you're not doing good, you've got more inventory laying there. You want to pay more tax. It makes no sense. And that's got to be curved back, if not eliminated.
Thank you. A good question was how do we get more jobs? Well, I'll first give you the more conservative answer, which I also believe in this. Government doesn't create jobs. But what we can do, like in the legislature, is work together to create an environment that people want to live in. You know, not only do we have improve the quality of life and make a state that people want to live in, people want to stay, and make it more attractive for young people. That brings industry, that brings business with it. I've heard, you know, over the past 4 years, the policy had been, and even before that, I mean, they eliminated business franchise tax more than 4 years ago. They cut the corporate net income tax drastically in the past decade, and that was done more than 4 years ago. And we talked about reducing the business inventory tax, but we cut the corporate net income tax. I heard the same argument that it would pay for itself by all the businesses that are going to be coming into the state. I haven't seen it work. It hasn't. I believe West Virginia ranks somewhere around the middle, actually in the top end, around 18 to 19, I believe, in business tax. But we're around 50th when it comes to our poverty. We're around 50th when it comes to workforce participation. So what I believe we need to do is create a quality of life and a state that people want to move to. It's a beautiful state. I don't think anybody would argue with that. You know, we're so close to the rest of the East Coast. It's a great place to live, and we need to get that word out, and also battle that negative image that we often carry outside the state. That's one of the biggest hindrances job for the state. And I think the statement was said by my opponent really starts with education. Education is an economic problem. We need to have a highly educated and productive workforce that starts with our schools. We need to also have schools, public schools that people want to send their kids to. I've heard it from the head of the local chamber of commerce. When he goes out and talks to businesses, their first question is not the tax structure, it's not the legal funds. Their first question is how it's. It starts with that.
You know, we already said we're not very attractive. We don't have very attractive business economy in this community. And there's many ways we can fix that. Of course, they were touched on the taxes, which, of course, corporate tax, bringing that down, inventory tax, and all those stuff we would like to see. They're lower over the next few years. Another big thing, though, is I've talked to kids that are teenagers now, and when they were in school, they were always smart, so they coal miner like my father. And coal is not going to be here very much longer. It's really it's a dying industry. It's came back in the past couple of years, but it's never going to be where it was, and it's going to be too expensive to mine at a certain point. The coal is going to be too expensive to get to. And I would like personally, I don't think the government should fund very much. I'm not one of those people that believe the government can fix very much. I believe in privatization. However, I do believe that the government should fund clean energy sources, and I think that's something our state can do. Our schools, we spend about half of our budget on schools. Actually, we do spend, whenever you count higher education into it, we do spend over half of our entire state budget on schools. And you have to remember where that money is going. I believe there's a problem in the school system. We have these teachers, they're saying they don't have the money for supplies. You've got them saying that they're paying out of their pockets so they're giving out supplies. But where's that money going? Personally, I don't see it on the entire school districts and the entire school system as a whole. And I believe that once we see where that money is going, once we can redirect it more into what is needed, and once we get the project taken care of, we can start lowering those taxes. I just want to touch on getting rid of those taxes.
Can you please clarify the fraud?
You know, I've talked to teachers in school systems. I've talked to a lot of them. Maybe not necessarily on the boards of education, but work closely with them, and they say that means and another big thing is I think probably school supply is doing too much for. And a company that's selling to the government is going to charge them more for selling to a private entity. And I think we could look at those contracts and see what we're paying for them and renegotiate.
I agree with Mr. Cushing. I don't think that we can rely solely on tax policies to create jobs. It's something we ought to look at. I know that finance committees are interested in sales taxes, but we've got to look beyond just sales taxes. We've got to look at the competition for coal and natural gas in America. And so if we're going to do anything with tax policy, it shouldn't be just to focus on one tax and say that's the entire environment that we have. I think in terms of policy, we've got to protect what we've got. We do need to encourage and help the coal industry. The business inventory tax is a heavy load to the coal industry. If we do look at taxes, comprehensive reduction is something we didn't have. How do we come up with $140 million? I don't know. That's difficult. We do have new resources. The Supreme Court's recent decision that we can collect sales taxes on interstate internet sales is huge. It could be $60 to $100 million in additional funds. And we don't have to raise the tax. That's just the fact, right? So there are new funds that are there. Of course, again, I mentioned the natural gas production tax that we brought in 2015 that would provide about $60 million. I think that's well we dedicated. And you know, in Kanawha County, when you look at local jobs, we need to help the coal industry needs Kanawha County, but the rest of Kanawha County is a service industry. And you know, arts and libraries and programming, the symphony, and all those things are so important to our area. They are jobs for us. And they are quality and what we can showcase when people come in interested in coming. We've got to help the chemical industry get it. We talk about cracker plants. The promise of that has been on the horizon for probably 10 years. We really need to get the benefit of the natural gas, not just piping out of state, but in terms of industrial production. We have a site at DuPont next to the DuPont plant, ready to go for a chemical plant. Just haven't been I'm not sure why, but we certainly try. We have facilities in South Charleston that we do. So we need to get industrial jobs as much as we can do that. But we also need to protect what we've got. Just, you know, willy-nilly cutting taxes is not necessarily the right policy. In terms of how do we keep people here, our young people, you know, a community college scholarship program would be huge. It would certainly help them. Just think of the high school counselor who could say to the student in ninth grade whose family's never been to college, no idea about it, you can go. You know, you're guaranteed in West Virginia. You stay here, you graduate from high school, you can go to the community college school. Or the AP program that the government provides, and that would be paid for out of school 8 months. So those are affordable programs. The college community college scholarship program is $10 million was the last number I got. Those are affordable programs that will transform lives and keep people in West Virginia. I think tourism, you know, we talk a lot about tourism. I want to see us put a whole lot of push behind it. We need to brand foods and products that we have. The West Virginia tomato, you know, our location allows us to do those things. We need to upgrade our park facilities, and we certainly need to get our own kids on school buses and around the state, seeing the historic sites and the important areas of West Virginia. That used to be so common. Around the capital, we had all of the school buses in the state that would be there at one point. They don't come anymore. And that's a fairly inexpensive program that enriches their lives and enriches them about West Virginia. I don't know if it stopped when the gasoline got expensive and covers all of it. So we've got to focus on what we have and our assets and what we can do to support young people that live in West Virginia and know that they can make a good change and a good part.
The fundamental question that I will ask in the legislature in terms of whether I vote for a bill or not is whether the bill is more likely or less likely to grow the economy and to increase jobs and bring new jobs to the states. If the answer to that question is yes, I'm likely going to support it. If the answer to that question is no, I'm likely not going to support it. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's several things that I think. For one, we have to address our tax rate. If there are businesses out of state that have a choice between relocating to West Virginia or another state, generally, I believe that they're going to go to the state where it's easier to do business. Same thing applies to regulations. We have to have common sense regulations that are conducive to businesses relocating here and helping out our existing businesses too. We need to do what we can to protect the environment, certainly, but we also need to have policies that are such that businesses are going to be encouraged to come here. The other thing that I think we need to take a look at is we need to have job training that's actually relevant to the jobs that are here or the jobs that are coming in the future. Every single degree program in the state of West Virginia, whether it's college or whether it's community college or technical school, we need to look at every single one of those job programs. And we need to ask ourselves, is this particular degree relevant to our current workforce or the workforce of tomorrow? 5 years, 10 years, later on down the road. We've got a lot of resources that we're putting towards education, but they have to be allocated in the right way that makes sense for us as a state. That's one of the things that I think we can do to push us in the right direction. If we go down that path, I believe that we're going to see jobs that are coming here. To speak to one of the other candidates referred to the Chamber of Commerce talking about strengthening our public school systems. I believe in that. We need to strengthen our public school systems. We need to focus on those fundamentals that are important to those people out here that look at whether they're going to relocate a business to West Virginia. The other thing that we have to do is we have to resolve the drug crisis in our state. Every single person in our state that has a drug problem of any sort, we need to be there, we need to help them. It doesn't matter what walk of life they're from, it doesn't matter what their income is, there needs to be a program to help those people. And one of the things that I would propose is that we have a facility set up for anybody who needs help. In my experience as an attorney, I've seen more successful long-term rehabilitation programs and ones that are based on science. I think that's what the focus needs to be on, rehabilitation. I've had numerous cases over the years, for example, in circuit court, abuse-led cases, where our firm has represented people, and I've seen it. I've seen these people that have drug problems, and sometimes it's not the people that you might ordinarily expect. For example, with Delegate Rose, what he does with his practice, I'm sure he's seen it before. He's seen these people that they get hurt in an industrial accident, they get hurt in a car wreck, and based on that, they get hooked on some sort of controlled substance. So those people need our help. We need to do everything possible to help them. We need to put our resources towards that.
I think with jobs and people leaving the area, leaving our state, a lot of that has to do with opportunity, whether that be educational, employment, entertainment, things like that. And that's why people pack up and leave. I mean, I grew up here in Kanawha County, haven't lived any place else except for Morgantown for a couple flavor years running around. But when I came through, we're at about 60 to 70% of people leave the state. That's high school graduates, and the number actually goes down just a very little bit for Promise Scholarship or other people according to their data. And opportunities, what I mean is programs like we have put together for the broadband expansion. The world's kind of flattened a little bit for us commercially to go and work with people around the world using internet, but in the area that Delegate Road and I represent, internet's not always available up some of our hollers and creeks and things like that. And if we don't focus on building that infrastructure and giving them that opportunity, how are they supposed to utilize the new technology and the new benefits that we're having in those growing industries? So I think that's something we need to focus on. We built the co-op program in legislation in 2016. We're trying to implement that in our area, trying to build that infrastructure so that a co-op program can be developed in eastern Kanawha, all the way from the city of Charleston limits all the way to the county line. And I think that's something that would be strong for people, just home-based and small entrepreneurs to grow opportunities. One of the other things that policy-driven or the policy that I would introduce and have introduced is a middle school career technical education program. This program that I introduced was a pilot program that would take 7th and 8th graders, which data shows that in 7th and 8th grade, if you haven't decided to go after a certificate or some kind of skill, you probably won't do so. So what I introduced was a opportunity for them to have an introduction to career and technical education in 7th and 8th grade, which would be a 1-semester class, and a person from every skill would come and visit the class each week and encourage them, whether going to college or not, to graduate high school with a certificate, a license, some kind of skill in their hand in case college or whatever the next step will work out. So I think if we focus on education and we change our priorities, to looking at options like that, I think that's the way to keep people right here.
Thank y'all. And I'd like to get started with Andrew Robinson here back. We talk about education. Obviously, education or K through 12 has been a big issue this past legislative session with teachers striking pay rates. I've not checked the figures recently, but I have checked before. Look, West Virginia funds education pretty well on a per student, per taxpayer basis. Yeah, teachers were paid before the increase. Teachers were paid among the lowest. And so it's not that we're misfunding education. Where is that money going? We've got 55 school districts, we've got a lot of regulation. What can and should the legislature do to help K through 12 improve education and make sure money that's funded for education actually goes to educating children?
Well, first off, I think even with the 5% pay raise, we're still 48th in the nation of teacher pay. So that's still an issue. While we did a little bit of help this time, we have to keep up with that first off. And like you're saying, we do keep up with national averages. I think we're among one of the highest per pupil to invest. But the problem we found, and we've looked into this, that with transportation, where our schools are located, the topography, trying to keep up with infrastructure, as we're seeing with Capitol High School yesterday, the day before. We're seeing that it costs more in West Virginia, just like it costs more to do business, it costs more to educate. So if we don't prioritize our monies, we're not going to get the bang for a buck that other states might, that have an easier route to get people to school, an easier route to build schools, and those kind of things. So like I was saying just a minute ago, that if we prioritize what we're sending them into and what programs we are developing and having for our students, I think that's a better way to spend our money.
I think top to bottom, what we need to look at is what are going to be the factors that consider moving our economy forward. I think one of the things we have to look at is what are our students being taught the fundamentals. I think before anything else, we have to focus on those fundamentals. We have to look at how are their test scores with regards to reading? How are their test scores in terms of math, the basics? I think we need to stick with the basics. I think we need to work in concert with our employers out there. We need to say to them, well, what are the skills that you think are relevant to industries that are going to help you do better? Because when our businesses do better, what happens is that's going to increase wages. I mean, it's really, education is an economic development issue. It really is, because if we look at the workforce, and we look at their level of training, I think that you need to have the best trained workforce out there, and we work. I mean, I think we need to have a conversation needs to be had routinely between business leaders in various communities and school officials as well. If we do that, they work together and try to come up with a plan. I think that's going to be something that's going to be really, really helpful in the future. I think we need to look at creating greater efficiencies in administration. I think that's a big issue that we have to talk about too. I don't know if there's been enough of a conversation in terms of what we can do to create more efficiencies on the administrative level. I think we need to look at, well, how does West Virginia, in terms of our administration compared to other states? Yes, we're fund our student ratios pretty well compared to other states, but at the same time, how much is that going to administration, and how much is that going to teacher pay? And I 100% support the increase in the teacher salaries. We need to do everything possible to give our teachers a raise in the future. And I think as a result of that, we're going to have better results with our students as well.
Well, on the calculus of wages, it's pretty obvious that the percentage that we're paying in is a little bit less than what I expect. I don't know that I can do the math, but we spend something like $10,000 to $11,000 per student statewide. And that would be for a classroom of 25 students. That would be about $250,000 if And the teacher there would be given something like $40,000, $50,000 or $60,000. So there's other costs and then ultimately you get audited. I do know that the transportation costs are huge and the facility costs are sometimes almost overwhelming. Non-county, of course, that's the budget that's coming up. We need to pass that into services. But certainly it would be appropriate for the state to turn that. West Virginia has a statewide funding system, which makes us very different. Because usually it's a county tax that produces those funds for the school. So ours is actually statewide, and so the state would have to do that. The Department of Education in Charleston is very large. There are lots of regulations and requirements that are imposed on schools, the grants, and other things. But you would think that in the system, that much funding that we would have for salaries and package. So I think that would be a really thing to study. I do encourage us to look not just at public education, but higher education. We've been starting out with colleges, and we've been with our cuts slowly every year. We've been increasing tuition. The effect is to increase tuition for the students, and it's becoming overwhelming for a lot of students to be able to do higher education. So I think that one of the things we need to do is to make sure that the cuts that we've been engaging in stop on higher education and campus. And I think we ought to look at the way we spend money in public education, public schools. But again, our cost of transportation and cost of facility management are very substantial. So I'd like to see what those numbers are.
Yes, sir. Earlier, I had some people in the education a little bit, touch on that a little bit. I said there's a wrong school system code. And I agree with Mr. Redlear. We need to audit the school system, audit the higher ups and see where this money is going. But also, I push for privatizations. That's what I believe is privatization. Will make it much more efficient, and I believe that the teachers will teach much better. They won't have they won't have the seniority of the regular business. But of course we can't have 100% privatization because there are no parents that can pay for it. So I don't know we can have 100%, but I think that there could be a limit on where the state will pay for it.
So essentially, privatization is just adopting charter schools in West Virginia.
Yes, sir. That's what I believe it will be this one. If you look at pretty much any system of the ran like that, is much more efficient. There was one in my time ago, the government just touched on a couple weeks ago. They had privatized, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, each year the cost of it was
Well, you stated earlier that our teachers were paid at the lowest pay. I think Dr. Robinson, right, we still have a lot. I believe addressing education issue starts in the classroom. We have to attract and retain the best teachers to our state. When you're not on a competitive level with at least your surrounding states, yeah, you're going to lose some of the best teachers. You're not going to attract the best teachers as they get out of college. If we're not at least competitive with our surrounding states. Now, yeah, we were able to give teachers and other government employees a 5% pay raise, but the work stoppage was never about the salary. It was about their insurance, and we haven't addressed that. I think it's time that we have a designated funding stream for their insurance agency. So we're not coming back time and time again trying to keep these folks' premiums at a level that they can afford. They deserve that stability. People go into public service and teaching, of course, public service. They go into that knowing they're not going to get paid a whole lot. That's not why they do it. But they're also told that they're going to have good insurance, and at least other than that. So it starts with that, giving them some stability. Now, the first year I served, I served on the education committee, and during that time, I was on a subcommittee that studied the school aid formula. I spent many weeks in a room studying the school aid formula, and I challenge anybody in the room to explain to me in very careful how the school aid formula actually works. The chair of the subcommittee wasn't even quite sure. But maybe it's time to reevaluate that. That is, a way for the counties to bring in less money to be able to keep the counties that have a higher revenue, and so we don't leave behind, some of the counties that are struggling, especially with some. But we do have a unique circumstance, especially with school consolidation, which was an attempt to save money. Now, it costs a lot more money in transportation. We got kids in the state that are traveling over an hour to get to school on school bus. That's a lot of wear and tear on the bus that requires more drivers. So we do have a unique circumstance. We can always do everything better. We can always be more efficient at what we do. One thing that was passed before I got there, they created a pilot program that really was the Texas district that I represent, and it gave more autonomy to some of the schools in Charleston. I believe that program has now expired. I've introduced bills over the years to extend that. I think it's something that really needs to be looked at and extended. First, extend the pilot program we have here and expand it to the rest of the state. And it's not about privatization, but it's about giving the local schools a little bit more autonomy. And I think that keeping things at a local level, the community schools at the center of the community knows what it's going to be out of that school. We talked about consolidation is difficult. Especially, I've heard that floated out there too. We have 55 boards of education. Yeah, it'd be great to streamline that. Very difficult to do once you get up to have people give up their authority over something. I know that you all probably familiar with consolidation here. The Gazette Mail that used to be the Charleston Gazette and the Daily Mail. I'm sure that went off without a hitch, right? It's fun to do. But we could always do things better. We could, look and make sure that the most important thing is the money gets to where it's supposed to be, that's the classroom.
Yes, a quick follow-up question. You said autonomy in local schools. What measures of autonomy?
Well, there was a law passed before I got here that created a pilot program on the west side, really gave the principals and the local school improvement councils a lot more autonomy in how the schools run, and so it was more the bottom line. I think they were able to have a little bit more control over those stuff. One thing I forgot to say, that one thing the legislature has done since I've been there constantly is always attacking the standards, and that makes it a very tough environment for teachers to teach in when the standards that they're supposed to be reaching keep being changed. And I know it's a hot button political issue that when I talk to teachers, that's not the problem. The standards are measurements. You're attacking what we're measuring their curriculum. That's different from changing the curriculum. There was a confusion there, and it's made it harder for the teachers to do their job.
Okay, I'm going to have to reiterate something I said earlier. To save millions of dollars, to go back to the teachers, to go back to the quality of education the kids get. I'm married to a teacher, 33-year teacher. All my friends are teachers because of that. I don't know anybody but teachers. And they agree, that there's a lot of money wasted on the administrative level, like Chris said, that these county boards of education. That money needs to go into education. It's what it's given from the state to the counties for. It's what's given from the federal level to the counties for. That's not being used for that in every aspect. Too much waste to get $100,000 a year superintendents. How many counties? That's quite a bit of money, folks. It's got to be curtailed. There's got to be stuff. We need to get smart at regional. I know people worry about jobs. It's not going to hurt your core employees. It's not going to hurt your teacher staff. It's not going to hurt your service personnel. But it's going to take a lot of administrative overhead from the education system in West Virginia. Another thing that helped this whole problem with education, teachers or anybody should have to go to the legislature every 2 or 3 years begging for a pay increase. Something needs to be done, like saving money in the board area, to give these teachers, say, here's your pay. Here's what it is. Because you know how much time is wasted in the legislature. I was up there during the first teacher strike. It was a mess. I was around during the second teacher strike, and we lost a teacher. It's sort of sad that they have to go through that when the funding can be put in place. That here's what your raise is. It happens at most jobs you work at, just like you all done it. When you get a raise as you go along. Now, another thing that's going to be hurting us bad, nobody's mentioned is computer-based learning. A lot of kids nationwide and in West Virginia are now getting the option to sit at home, be seen as on TV, and have their entire education on computer. The state's paying for it, all right? The boards are paying for it. And it can't happen. That's not going to help train our children any better. But it takes the burden off the counties. Got to have extra teachers and whatever. It's a joke. That needs to be stopped. Somebody needs to address that issue in the legislature. Now, another thing that hurts our system is right back to the economy. You know, we get federal money based on populations. But if that population's low, we're losing more money. We're seeing that right now. So it all goes back to the economy. I think Bill Clinton says economists, he's right. We build and grow our businesses and manufacturing bases, get better paying jobs. People are going to be there. There's going to be more money for education in West Virginia. That's where I'm at.
I'd like to start off by saying that I agree with fully funding and making teachers pay at a level that attracts the best and brightest teachers to the state of West Virginia. Education is one of the most important factors in economic and job growth. We have to pay attention to that. Like some of the candidates have said here, I think we need to look at maybe regional school systems. Not necessarily eliminating Board of Education, but the upper level administration. And we have some counties have one high school in the county, and a Board of Education to go with it. I think we can do it better. We can streamline that. I've been out of state visits in some schools in areas that have these regional Board of Education, and what they're able to provide their students is phenomenal. I think that's definitely something to look at. And actually, Delegate Pushkin mentioned the bottom-up model. Give more power to the principals, the Board of Education. You need to keep those. We can't move everything out and away from the communities. We have to leave a structure in place. And the county Board of Education will remain in place. But give them the authority to have decision-making with the principals, the schools in that area, whether it be curriculum, whether it be the local needs, or even now we see all kinds of hours that your school operates. We need to put that down to the bottom level and work back up. Higher education, which was mentioned, we've got to look at that as well. We're funding higher education for programs, degrees, certificates, things that may not even be relevant to the growth of West Virginia. We have got to take a look at that, especially promised scholarship money, or if we do head towards funding higher education for students. Are these things that are going to benefit the state of West Virginia, help our job market grow and prepare these people for the future of West Virginia and the careers that will be available?
Okay. Let's talk about the Delegate Pushkin, we'll start with you. Now, briefly, mindful of your colleagues and time, briefly and specifically, I'd like to hear what each of you thinks is the best shot for fixing PEI. We started to talk about that. So you want to elaborate?
Sure. Try to keep it as short as possible. We have to designate a real funding stream for PEI. One of the solutions that is, one suggestions that brought up that I could support would be a slight increase in the severance tax on natural gas. We recognize the tax rate at 5%, as less than the percentage we tax sales tax.
6, and you're also having sellers. I would hate to see what has happened over the years with other extraction industries like the oil industry, where large out-of-state companies have benefited from our natural resources, and our citizens, especially our children, have not viewed as much benefit from it as possible. So that's one suggestion that I could. A lot of folks here know that I was also a proponent of the petrochemical sector. I think that is another, once it's up and running, if it's ever allowed to be, I think that is something else to describe in the activists.
Who else has a very useful?
We have to have a dedicated funding source. So we've got two possibilities. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, is the natural gas production tax. It's not a gross receipts tax that we have now. It was a tax that was on to pay for the workers' compensation fund. It went off in 2015. It's about $60 million a year. That would cover PEI now, and we saw some leveling of health costs at the end of this year for the first time. So if you didn't have any significant increases, that would only help. But we've also now we have a way to collect out of state and internet sales taxes, which could be anywhere from $60 to $100 million. And it levels the playing field for brick and mortar stores here in West Virginia, which would certainly helps to keep jobs here in West Virginia. But for PEI fixed, we need to look at it comprehensively, not just PEI, but also wages. We should have a dedicated source so that teachers and public employees would know where they can look to see what kind of ways. We've got an opportunity to get in now and do it and set up a dedicated funding stream so that we're ahead of the inflation that's coming. Because the new federal policy is increasing interest rates and just planning on increasing inflation. So I think if we can do that and dedicate those it would make a huge difference. The beauty of the reduction tax is that it would go up every time you add a pipeline. And pipelines, it seems, are coming. And remember, who's going to pay that tax? It's the folks that are the end users. And what's going to be left soon is there's almost no jobs in the gas industry that's pumping everything that we have out of state to benefit other folks and keep that price unreasonably low means that we're just giving away, all the jewels that we have in our economy in West Virginia. So I think that the production tax would be good. It's not as volatile as the gross receipts tax. And I think that it would be a way that we definitely take care of the problem now and also provide for funding stream for pay raises, regular pay raises to keep us up.
Yes, sir.
I will say I do not agree with raising severance tax for two reasons. One of them, we're talking about ways we want to make West Virginia more attractive for business. We're already higher than Ohio and Pennsylvania severance tax. We don't need to make ourselves any more attractive by raising the severance tax. Another thing, it's a very volatile, we're talking about taxing extraction. We saw what happened when coal fell. That tax base was gone. Are we going to do that again? Especially for PI. We don't need to do that, especially for PI. Teachers don't deserve that. They don't need that uncertainty. We need something that is a fix, that is certain and will be there. Severance tax is not the answer. I think we need to look at our contract maybe with Caremark CVS. That's pretty lucrative. That'd be a start. I know right now the projections are we can freeze it for 3 years. I think there's other solutions we can find. There's other cuts we can make. But raising taxes for two wrong reasons.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, now, if I said there's some quick way to do it like that, I'd be lying. Okay? We do too much of that all the time. But they do need to look for a funding stream for this, a steady funding stream. And they need to look at the total administration. We went from the large raise everything to 44 million now next year. Or whether it's been correctly, that's a lot. Yeah, that. But they need to look at how it's ran what they do with the money when they get it, they need to look at that building. We go elsewhere and get a better bid on our health services, our health administrative services like Caremark. And they also need to, like I say, have regional board meeting, folks. We need to start saving some of this money that we're wasting on education. Is not going to education, not going to the service personnel or the teachers. All right? Now, I'll hold steadfast about that. And we don't need to beat industry to death to do anything. Yeah, I've lived here all my life. Come from a working class family, house of coal miner myself and my father, and involved in businesses, helped run businesses. And one thing I hate about West Virginia, if you throw a quarter down in this state on anything, it's like a bunch of vultures running after to tear it apart. Then they want to throw more on that quarter. See, it makes no sense. We need to get that economy again. The economy's going to help the PDI. The population is going to help the PDI.
Yes,
First of all, I want to say that anybody who's facing any kind of premium, I feel for them. I think that's it. The healthcare crisis that our country has gone through the past 8 to 10 years has affected everyone. It's affected my family. This past year, our insurance premiums were going to go up to over $2,400 a month with the same plan I had the year before. And so, based on the federal standards, you would have to make, and I don't make this, but you'd have to make it $220,000 for the cheapest healthcare plan on the Obamacare exchange.
so that's great when you run for Congress, but for the legislature, we talk about.
Sure, absolutely.
So fix the beginning.
Well, I agree with the sentiments of Delegate Jeffrey's statement. I believe with what he had to say there. And what we need to do is we need to look at what the Governor's Commission is doing. They're supposedly going to be coming out with the reports. And one of the things I don't think we can do is, at this point, I'm getting concluded, I believe Administrator Cheatham has said that we should be good for at least another year in terms of current, and to be able to fund the current level of benefits. So we need to look at all options. We need to see what we can do to try to fund this. But I agree that to have something like as volatile as severance taxes, the PEIA, we talk about that, I disagree.
Let's go to Mr. Beard.
Well, of course, I can't favor where the day was privatization. But, yes, but I think you kind of review it from the ground up, and it needs to be really transparent to be a ridiculous thing into it, and there's and take it out. Of course, that money is used for a specific purpose. And that goes, it shouldn't, really, we shouldn't have to have it from where they should be the teachers. And you pay them, you take whatever much out of this, that they want to pay. But they do it. Yeah. And every so often,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I
I'm ready.
have a little bit of concern with a lot of the fixes we talk about are long-term funding stream. My concern is if we can keep up with that, no matter what funding stream we tie to it. We're looking at somewhere around, Mr. Cheatham told us it's $50 million a year with 10% compounding interest, with medical costs raising somewhere between 6 to 10% annually. So even if we tie severance tax or something like that to it, I don't think we can keep up with it. So I think we have to go back and try to, it's a restructure of how the plan works, what benefits are available, and those kind of things, along with tying some funding to it. But I think the more important thing is restructuring the whole plan and trying to build it in a way that we can keep up with it. Because at $50 million a year with 10% compounding interest, I see no way that any of these ways can keep up with that kind of need. The severance tax is what we see here the most. My worry with the severance tax is that we're not real sure where we are in competition with our surrounding states. I've asked both the oil and gas industry associations there. They don't have a report or any kind of strong data to show us where we compare with the surrounding states. I've asked the state tax department, the research development, they said, well, that kind of information would take months. And that was the last response I got in my email asking for a comparison. So I think with our severance tax, we need to investigate and see where we are in competition with the Pennsylvanians, Ohio's, New York's, Virginia's, before we either raise or lower or change our severance tax. Because it looks like we're looking at lowering if the interim meetings or anything of any kind of evidence that they're pushing for a lowering of those taxes rather than increasing. And to go either way, up or down, I think we need to research those before we tie anything as important as BDI to it.
Certainly, the other delegates of the straightforward operating test methods. Curious to your experience with that, as to people say the process is kind of both sides, for one side to take a report, and also people all nervous about the increased control that's proposed for the legislatures we have. So start with the comments.
If you don't mind, and I'd like to go through the timeline just a little bit. And I'll do it very quick. Okay, when we first learned through very good reporting about some of the abuses going on in the Supreme Court, mainly the Chief Justice time now in law. It concerned me a lot, enough that I introduced a resolution during the regular session to start the process then. At the time, it was met with, well, it wasn't taken seriously. The President of the Senate, who was now where the trial is now in the Senate, at the time called it the single most ridiculous political stunt he's ever seen in his time in the legislature. That's where they are now. During the regular session, which would have saved taxpayers money to actually take it up during the regular session, of course, that resolution was not taken up. It was ignored. I couldn't get a response from leadership in the legislature on that. So after the session was over, I sent a letter to then Speaker Armstead, now Justice Armstead. I sent a letter to him asking if we could take up the investigation during interims. I waited over a month, did not receive a response from Justice Armstead. So then I submitted 2 complaints to the Judicial Investigation Commission. As we all know, those were active. They did take it seriously, much more seriously than the legislature did. And the result of that was Justice Lawfrey was suspended without pay. That's when the legislature, the leadership in the legislature, decided to take this seriously. When they had a conservative justice suspended without pay. And then the response to that was, and I know that there was a lot of stuff that is inexcusable, indefensible, that was going on in the Supreme Court for years. That's a result of them having control over their budget. To answer that part of the question, I voted for the resolution to put on the ballot for Amendment 2, and I will vote for Amendment at the voting booth. But what exactly rises to the level of corruption? And I think everybody can agree that the actions of former Chief Justice Alan Lawfrey, his actions rose to the level of corruption. We have also seen some overreach. I'm concerned that the Senate's going to get this done in a timely manner. But it really wasn't until, I think it's important to point out though, that the legislature wasn't going to do anything until Alan Lawfrey was suspended without pay and couldn't take the bench. And that's when they decided to act. When the call came from the governor that put the entire Supreme Court on a more and more members, it was that ambiguous. I realized that this was going to be extremely politicized. Now, generally it's compared to a trial that's going on in the Senate. I don't know if any trial or half the jury is up for re-election. It's going to be political. If this were a real trial, I think we'd be looking into placing the jury.
I think the Supreme Court issue, we jumped into this, and I was actually kind of excited for the different environment that we were going to feel. We were told that in '89 it was very nonpartisan. They worked together well. They worked through and actually did a strong investigation. Just like with the majority of what our legislature does, they found a way to screw this up. They went through and made this probably the most partisan thing you could ever put together, to the extent that we made a request. So we wanted to amend the rules to have an agenda. We wanted to see just copies of who they were subpoenaing and what the information they got, and that was blocked to that extent. And I think that was a good sign for us how it was going to go. And we drug it out. We worked maybe 2 days, 1 day a week, if that, through the whole summer, just long enough to get past that August 14th date so they know we could be elected and we could bring some appointees in the back door. And to the extent now that the warnings that a lot of us were pointing out as we're going through the process of the inaccuracies and the wrong procedural motions and things like that are now being challenged in federal court. I mean, it just goes to the fact of how broken our legislative system is and the leadership that we need to revamp and get people growing into an extent that items like this, we fix the things and go after the corruption that are actually there and not drag it down a partisan route into the extent that we have, that we're wiping out the entire branch of government.
Where do you stand on which session?
It's concerning to me because of the makeup of our legislature now. If you go through the members of our finance committee, excluding Delegate Rowe, of course, it gives me great concern of what kind of retribution the current members and the current makeup of our legislature would take on different rulings that the Supreme Court will make.
You know, I can vote on it yet.
I would probably vote for it because I actually was questioning it and wondering if policy-wise it was the right decision. And then I went and watched Justice Lawfrey present his finance presentation to the Senate, and that changed my mind.
I'm for the constitutional amendment to give the legislature oversight. I think almost every other legislature has that. I think that because of the spending we saw, I mean, absolutely horrible spending that we've seen, that I think there's a need for it. It's really hard not to justify. I started out being very resistant, but I had to change positions as the session went on and saw the uses of it. Now, with that said, I have to say that whenever I opened up the newspaper and I saw the big headline that says, I think it was the Chief Justice indicted, and my stomach just fell to my ankles. I was just absolutely ill. As an attorney, the real concern I have is the independence of the judiciary. When we come through this process, I really have great doubt that we will have an independent judiciary. You say because of the people they're appointing, they're not necessarily there, although to have an entire court appointed by one governor is really breathtaking of itself. But the idea that when we did there's no question we should impeach people because they lied, cheated, and steal. But the legislature, the House, I voted against it. The House went way beyond that. To impeaching people with no standards whatsoever. I mean, Justice Walker and Justice Workman now are standing on administrative decisions made to the court. They're not extravagant. They're not in violation of any major rule that are could be completely supportive for their administration of the court. Administration board. That we had 1 to 2 senior judges that were paid in excess of what a statute back in the early 90s that was passed. The Supreme Court had to get senior judges into positions where the sitting judge was not able to serve. And that's really difficult. How do you get a judge who's making $80,000 to go down and spend a week or two and say, Williams, it's really difficult to move judges around. It's only about 1 or 2. That is a basis of impeachment of Justice Workman because she was a Chief Justice at the time. I don't understand that. I don't see how. There's nothing. Based on that, there's no standard that you couldn't find from the Supreme Court's administration that would be not impeachment. I mean, this is, and I can't believe that the Senate is going forward. That should be listened to. We also have, of course, the administrative rules and regulations that should be done. Now, all of the things that were done that were illegal are illegal, and there are other rules and regulations that do. I don't see any need that we should have, again, another administrative decision become an impeachable offense. It's really dangerous, and I think the independence of the judiciary now will forever be challenged here.
So, who else?
You vote on this?
I wasn't involved in the hearing of impeachment.
Speaker Armstrong is still.
Right, he was. I mean, I will give you my opinion. I do think there needs to be some checks and balance in the control of the budget of the judiciary, so I support that. And so I think West Virginia is the only state that does not have any oversight of the judiciary budget, so much needed.
Very quickly. What rises the level of removing somebody from office? What rises the level of overturning the will of the voters of West Virginia? It should be a pretty high bar. And I think that would be lying, cheating, stealing, corruption. That's what we saw from the Chief Justice Alan Longry. When we went into the impeachment hearings, proceedings in the House, the State Chamber of Commerce, not exactly a left-leaning organization, came out against the impeachment of the other three justices. And I'd say going ahead with a trial to remove somebody from office who's no longer in office is a complete waste of the taxpayers.
This is, in terms of amendment to the legislature to take control and have oversight of the budget, I think that's, I agree with you. With regards to Justice Lawfrey, I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I think with regards to the other justices, let me say this. I didn't have everything in front of me that was presented to the House. I didn't, quite frankly, I would go through all of that. The newspaper articles really in depth about everything that was presented. Based on what I did read, I think at a minimum admonishment would be appropriate. Session would be appropriate, but in terms of whether removal from office would be appropriate, I don't have a firm opinion on that based on what I've read in the newspaper articles and what I've heard in the media. So that's my position.
2 seconds. Yeah, I want to thank Mark for what he did to did a great job. But no government entities function the Senate. The court system, just like DHHR or anybody else, they need to have their purchasing authority outside of the entity, and they also need to be subject to the legislative auditor's office. So if the legislature is not sure we think those run periodically, regardless of being asked from all agencies, legislative auditing needs to be done.
Yeah, just first, I'm going to touch on the risk control of the legislature. I suppose that it's pretty clear that there's be checks and balances. Obviously, there's no check around there. Everything to close the politicization of it. I think that's terrible that the party didn't really care until just as long as it was pretty much moved to the bench. If someone's doing something wrong, I think sure we have party range and all that out, and we should support the investigation for that. As for the other justices, again, I didn't say that they also yourself, but if they didn't do something that is impeachable, they should be investigated for impeachment. Maybe if there's other crimes that they did, investigating for that is certainly.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much for this time.
Thank you.
Thank you.